Welcome everybody to Tammy Tuesday. We're happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. Super excited for our guest, my dear friend, Karen Schell. She is truly a great friend and a soul sister, and I'm very happy to have her here to share her story and her journey. We've known each other, gosh, how many years has it been? We met, of course, so many of my friends I met in the magazine business, and it was, what year was that? 21?
It feels like 5 years.
I know. Well, it always feels longer than it is. But maybe it was 5 years.
I think it was 5, but it feels like 10.
Yes, it feels longer.
Well, it feels like
than
a
that.
Lifetime.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's probably because we have known each other lifetimes.
Yes, I think maybe previous lifetimes too.
Yes, I'm sure that's very true. So anyway, when we met, it was funny because we had this magnetism to each other. Eric, my husband, which I've talked about before, he has this amazing gift of putting us around the right people at the right time. And we were at a party for an organization that Karen started and ran for a long time. And he was just like, we need to talk to her. And so, of course, at this party, Karen and I started talking, and I was like, I know you. And we've been friends ever since.
Yes, and I felt exactly the same.
Yeah.
Immediate soul sisters.
Totally. Isn't it funny how that works?
And then when we met for the first time outside of that party for lunch, I think it was as if I'd known you my whole life.
I know.
And just instantly fell in love.
I know. It's so cool. That is the most real experience that I have with certain people, that all of a sudden, I mean, you just can't deny it. It's something it's like a magnet. You're like, I know you. Like, we're supposed to know each other. And there's just an instant connection. It feels like you've known each other forever. And it's, I'm sure, truthfully, because we have known each other forever. So you are definitely one of those people in my life. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And the reason I wanted to bring you on today is because you have such an amazing journey and story to tell, even to this point, which I know it's just continuing to evolve, just like all of us. And so let's start by giving just a snapshot of a background on you, a little bit of your story. Again, just kind of Cliff's Notes of your background, and then we'll kind of dive into where it's taken you. There's so much to dive into here. Your physical health, your past early life trauma, the organization that you've built, so many things. So just give us a little snippet and I'll let you kind of go run with it.
Okay. So an overall snippet of my story is I came from a very challenging, abusive childhood and background. And that gave me a lot of drive to overcome and also to help others. And so I've been giving back and helping others since, even while I was still living through it. So since about 20 years old, I was actively seeking out giving back. So that has been a lifelong pursuit for me. I've also spent 30 years as a commercial photographer. And then it was about 12 years ago that I founded a nonprofit. I took my service work, my giving back and helping others to a whole new level when I founded a nonprofit. So currently, I have stepped away from running the organization that I founded, and I am creating my chapter 3. So there has been a lifetime of lessons. The journey is ever changing. Certainly, it's a whole new set of lessons for me right now. So it's been a very, very interesting journey in general, but especially the past year and a half.
Yeah, I know. And that's when, and you've shared some of that with me, and I've even stopped you because I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to hear more about this, but I want to share it with other people because these stories and journeys are crucial for people to hear. Because when we hear through other people's experiences, it shows us what's possible. It shows us that we're all the same. We're connected. We have these things that we deal with, these things we can overcome and grow through. And you have really just blown my mind with so much growth that's happened with you just since I've known you. Again, feels like we've known each other forever because we probably have. But in this life, the things that I've seen you go through and overcome and the challenges and all of the things. I want to talk about first, because one of the first times we got together, you were sharing with me your life, and you have had serious physical challenges. And you back up. I mean, first of all, you're a badass. I mean, I'm going to let you tell this story, but Karen, you're an avid hiker, you're an adventurist, you do things, and you've done that in your life. And there's been obstacles that you've been faced with because you have physical challenges with your body that you have to live with, right? So talk about that a little bit, because I found that fascinating with some of those things that you faced.
Well, it certainly feeds into my journey from the very beginning. I have had a tendency to push myself throughout my lifetime. And I know it is directly related to this sense of survival and the need to overcome. And I have a very, very strong sense of survival.
Right.
And it really started, well, there's two aspects to it. I've got a spine that causes me problems. But then there's another side of the health issues, and that's caused from my pushing myself so hard. So I really have two things that I've faced.
When you say pushing yourself, do you mean stress induced?
Stress induced, yes.
Okay.
Pushing myself to extreme limits, working so hard.
You don't say.
No.
Okay, people, this is what I'm talking about. How many of us do this, right?
Yeah.
Here's another example.
Yeah, and my examples are pretty extreme. It's almost, it's quite extreme.
Right.
So I'll talk about both. So I'll first talk about the pushing myself, and then I'll talk about the spine. But at some point, they're going to overlap. Mm-hmm. So at a very young age, I was just so driven, and in survival mode. And I realized I spent so much of my life in survival mode.
When you said, define what you mean by survival mode, so we have a better understanding. Why do you think it was survival mode? What made it a survival mode?
Just my pushing myself so hard, being such an overachiever and a doer, always wanting to grow and accomplish so much in the process, but at the same, which is all good, except taking it too far and not taking care of myself along the way.
What were the reasons behind the pushing to do all those things, do you think?
Well, just this feeling that I had to survive life.
Okay.
And so I'll come back to a very recent revelation that is directly related to that.
Okay.
So remind me.
Yes, I will.
It's a very important part of my recent journey.
Okay.
Is a deeper understanding of why. Something that I've not been able to fully understand until recently.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Epiphanies.
Yes, definitely an epiphany.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's something that I've always recognized, but never really fully understood.
Okay.
And people have pointed out to me, but I still,
You had to know it for yourself.
I had to know it for myself.
Okay.
And my body kept trying to talk to me.
Yes.
It was sending me some pretty loud messages. So first let me talk about my back. I was in elementary school. I was diagnosed with scoliosis, and
Severe scoliosis, right?
I'm not even sure, but nothing was done.
Okay.
We didn't even have health insurance. So,
right.
And nor do I know if anything could have been done. So I knew then that my spine wasn't shaped quite right. And then by the time I was in about 17, I didn't experience any pain until I got physically active. And ironically, I was completely inactive as a kid because I was surviving.
Okay.
So at home, it was stressful. Right. And so it wasn't until I had the freedom to get to learn about myself, and I discovered I had this athletic side. So ironically, then I went on to have an incredibly active, physical adult life. So it wasn't until I got physically active, which was on a bicycle, which provided me such freedom.
Okay.
Just to get on there and fly like a bird, just me and the sky and the wind in my face.
Oh, wow.
So when I discovered that, I discovered a really deep passion for being outside and for being physical and expressing myself that way. But that's also when I started feeling pain.
Okay.
So by the time that I was about 17, I was experiencing pain. I would get off my bike and be in so much pain, it would take me 30 minutes to lay down in my bed at night.
Oh my gosh.
It's like I was laying on knives, but I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want them to take that away from me.
Right.
It brought me joy and freedom. So I kept it quiet, but it didn't take long for my family to realize by looking at me, watching me move, and they're like, what's going on with Karen? So went to a chiropractor, had x-rays, and found out that basically I had curves where I shouldn't, and where I should have curves, I didn't.
Okay.
So I was diagnosed at that point with straightening of the normal cervical lordosis.
Wow. So
I decided, well, okay, that's my thing. I will, just deal with it and ignore it. So I went on to, there's this theme throughout my life that because I was so used to living in survival mode, that I had convinced myself I was Superwoman, and I didn't have the same limitations as most humans.
You were invincible.
I was invincible. So anyway, so fast forward, my back ended up getting worse. I went on to have an incredibly active life.
Talk about that a little bit, because it is incredibly active. I mean, like, big time.
Yes. Well, I do love adventure.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so it included hiking, climbing, surfing, scuba diving, motorcycles, you name it, just about everything.
Right. Adrenaline junkie too.
Adrenaline, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I can relate to that.
I love to travel. I love adventure. And it brought me a lot of joy. And it's always been a very big part of my life. The back issue got a lot worse after I climbed Rainier.
Just Rainier.
Just Rainier.
That little old mountain.
And the interesting thing, the reason I climbed Rainier, I'd always had a very active life, but I'd never really done, high altitude mountaineering with ice axes and crampons.
I don't even know what that is.
Most people don't. But the reason I did that was I had gone through a challenging time in my life. And I always...
What age were you when you did that?
I was 39.
Okay.
When I summited Mount Rainier.
Okay. Keep going. Sorry.
It's okay. So I had gone through divorce and massive identity theft, and life had gotten really hard and stressful. It was prolonged stress. And I thought I wasn't feeling my flame. And I don't know how else to describe it besides I feel this fire burning inside of me every day. Mm-hmm. And it keeps me inspired and motivated and creative, and I wasn't feeling it. And, the divorce was finally over, and the identity theft finally stopped, and other big life things were going on, but I wasn't feeling it. So I thought, well, where's my flame? It's not coming back.
Oh, wow.
So if if it's not going to come back on its own, then I'm going to go find it. So that was my Rainier.
Got it.
So I decided I needed something extreme to get my flame back. And it worked. I did. I got my flame back. Just the journey preparing for it helped me get my flame back. But unfortunately, at the same time, it also was too much for my spine. So it was extreme. It was 27 men and me. Mm-hmm. Half did not make it to the false summit, and only 3 of us made it to the true summit.
Wow.
So it was very intense. And
3 of us, she said. She made it.
Yes, I was one of them.
That's amazing.
Thank you. So pretty soon after that, I decided I was going to climb another mountain called El Pico de Orizaba, which is outside Mexico City. Same level of technical difficulty and same vertical gain, as I call it, but much higher. Mm-hmm. So that was going to be my 40th birthday present to myself. I thought, well, now that I know what this is like, and I know I'm going to do well up there, I want to enter my 40s feeling youthful and empowered and the best shape of my life.
Light your fire.
Exactly. Keep that fire lit. But it kind of backfired. So during the training for that, my body got my attention. And so fast forward, so I didn't end up making that climb, and because of the issues I was experiencing. And then a few specialists later, finally the third one really looked big picture, and he said, it's your spine, something's really wrong. So we MRI'd all 3 sections, and then I realized everything that was going on. So I'm like, oh, no wonder I'm in a lot of pain.
Right.
So, so life, sort of shifted at that point. I couldn't do a lot of my hobbies. But there was a one point where I was concerned about walking, because my knees were buckling. It started like 5 times a day, and then it increased to 20 times a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know what was happening. No one could really give me any concrete answers. And I didn't know, okay, well, it was 5, now it's 20. 3 months from now, will I be walking?
So much that you literally would just fall down. You would just crumble.
I would practically hit the ground. I'd grab things. But yeah, no warning, because my knees were fine. Mm-hmm. I just would just drop.
Collapse.
And I seriously didn't know if I'd be walking. No one could tell me why. I'm like, so 3 months from now, it'll be 50 times a day?
Right.
So, and I remember getting really mad at my body. Every time it would happen, I'm like, gosh, Karen, darn it, you're an invalid. You're falling apart. You're an invalid. You're falling apart.
Hard on yourself.
So yeah, I'm very good at being hard on myself.
Yeah.
And so I went from, it felt like from superwoman to invalid overnight. And I just summited Rainier, and now I'm worried about walking. And
that's such an ego stance too.
Right?
I mean,
yes. And that's how loudly my body has to speak to me for me to listen.
Right. Well, sometimes it's got to shake you hard.
Yes.
Inside to get you to really pay attention.
So, so I learned that the messages that you speak to yourself are so critically important. And so during this period of time where I was being so hard on myself and getting angry at my body, I heard Joe Dispenza speak about the power of the brain and how it's scientific fact. You are your thoughts. It is not a concept. And if you have a recurring thought, your brain creates a neurological pathway. And so you literally become your thoughts.
Yep.
And sends peptides into your body. And I thought, my gosh, if I keep telling myself I'm an invalid and falling apart, I'm guaranteeing I will be an invalid and falling apart.
What great timing that suddenly that smacked you and made you realize you've got to stop the way you're thinking.
Yes. I've always been one to, when I'm facing something, to dive in. Ironically, that time I couldn't go climb another mountain.
So I
had to really dive inward. Mm-hmm. And I'm really grateful. I've always had a tendency to do that, but I had to do it at a much deeper level. So there's a little bit of history on my back. We'll return to that. But the other physical things that I've experienced is from pushing myself to the point where first I literally would not sleep. Mm-hmm. I would push myself so hard that I thought it wasn't that I couldn't sleep. I wouldn't allow myself the time to sleep. So I'm in my 20s. And I'm falling asleep at the wheel every day.
Oh my gosh. Seriously?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Whoa.
I was still very much in survival mode. My stepfather was in jail, and I was working 3 jobs, helping my mom out. And it really started in college, and I was working full time. I had to keep my grades up to keep an academic scholarship that I had. And so I barely slept through college. At least one night every week, didn't go to sleep at all. And the rest of the time probably averaged 3 hours. So that's when it started. And then it continued after college, as I'm trying to build my business and help my mom and build a career in a very competitive field. So I continued this habit of just not sleeping. Well, then I started falling asleep at the wheel. Truly a miracle that I did not kill myself or someone else.
Seriously.
So it ended up affecting my heart. Anyway, so this is just an example of how hard I've always pushed myself. So fast forward now to while I'm running my business and also founding and building a nonprofit.
Talk about that for just a second, because you did that for reasons. So talk about that just a little bit. Dive into what created that idea, that brain baby, to have the passion and drive to want to do that, because that's a huge purpose thing and had a lot to do with you. So talk about that just a little bit. How that came to be.
Well, so the organization that I founded grew out of 20 years of work I was already doing. So initially, what has always fueled that is just, honestly, I'm so grateful that I figured out a lot of really important life lessons early, and it's because of what I went through. I realized how important it is that you realize happiness is a choice. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what is happening in your life. I knew people that had every advantage in the world, had loving parents, no challenges, all the money in the world, and they weren't happy. And so at a very young age, I learned happiness is a choice. And every day you wake up and you decide to be happy. So it's been a big part of how I've lived my life. And I was just really grateful for that. I think I just was born with some resilience gene or something. And so I was really driven to give back. And it's hard to define exactly why. I was too young at the time to even really understand it. But it has always been really healing for me, because it's always kept my priorities in order. Even when, as I describe it, it's very easy to get stuck in a bubble.
Right.
And a lot of people spend their lives in a bubble and they don't even know they're in it.
Right.
And when you're in that bubble, all of your problems are magnified. Mm-hmm. And you're very self-centered. And giving back has always gotten me out of my bubble. Mm-hmm. There are two things: giving back and my adventure and my play. I was always doing those two things. I never got stuck in my bubble. It kept me joyful. It kept me grateful. And so over and over again throughout my lifetime, I would, I'd have problems just like anyone. Work problems and computer problems. I remember this one day, I worked 3 months on this project and it had fallen apart, and I was having all these issues, and I was driving down to a school. I committed to working with there's a school for homeless kids, and I was driving down there and, beating myself up with my self-talk and, gosh, darn it, Karen, why do you do this to yourself? You've got all these problems. You don't have time for this. And then, so totally stuck in my bubble.
Right.
All my problems magnified. And then I got there, and within 5 minutes of being with those kids, immediately my priorities right back in order. And
I need to say something too, because this is so important to this conversation and for the whole message here, which is, you said specifically, as long as I was giving back and I was playing and finding my joy that fuels my fire inside me, I was out of my bubble and I was good. I was peaceful and joyful and grateful, right?
Yep.
So that comes down to, I have goosebumps, the self-love. You were pouring into the things that really lit you up.
Yeah.
And that's when things were joyful and peaceful and you felt gratitude.
Exactly.
And centered and happy. And then when you went to this place of, I love that you call it a bubble because it's perfect. The bubble of negative self-talk and beating yourself up, you get right back into that bubble of this messy, uncomfortable, not fun place, and probably was increasing your ailments and all of your physical problems.
Yes.
It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So this particular day, I get there, and all of a sudden I'm like, immediately back to my joyful, grateful state, and driving home, literally a completely different person than I drove there. Oh, poor Karen is having problems. So this is something that, especially when I didn't have time, or I thought I didn't have time, if I made it a priority to do that, it it was such a gift to me throughout my lifetime to keep my priorities in order and keep me out of that bubble. So it's been really healing for me. But there's just nothing more rewarding than to help others.
Right.
So, it has fueled me throughout my lifetime. Specifically with the nonprofit that I founded, as I said, it grew out of 20 years of work I was already doing.
Talk about that a little bit, because at least somewhat of the nature of it.
Of the nonprofit I founded. Well, I'll explain how it started. And so there's, back at the same homeless school, I've been doing stuff for that school for 30 years at this point. And I had been doing a lot of things. I decided I was going to try this program, really, really focused around, it was a mentoring program and really focused around building resilience in these kids. So I thought, I'm going to try this program. And that's what I do. I'm an entrepreneur. I come up with ideas and I act on them. So not unusual for me to do that, but the years prior, I had done so much over the years that I wasn't an official 501c3. People knew me. They knew of the work I was doing. They trusted me. So I was able to pull off a whole bunch of stuff without being an official 501c3.
Right.
And I'd done so much for the school that whatever I said, here's my idea. And they'd always say, okay, great. So I told them my idea. They said, okay. So I tried this program, and it was another one of my many ideas. But I didn't expect to see the transformations that I saw in the kids. And, kids that I knew well. So I tried this program for kids that I'd already known for 5 years very closely. And these kids that were disconnected, withdrawn, no confidence, behavioral issues, these were different kids. They became, connected, bright, vibrant, confident kids. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I think after 20 years, I have finally found the way to really make a difference in these kids' lives. And so that's when I decided to sort of funnel all of my efforts into this one program and created the 501c3 around it, and then spent the last 12 years growing it and building it and reaching more kids and doing it on a deeper level. So that's how it was originally
that's amazing.
Founded. So fast forward, I was also running a very demanding business at the same time. So I was working 2 full-time jobs, putting it mildly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And that was your business, right?
It was my business.
Yeah. Photography. Yeah.
Commercial photography. So clients were advertising agencies and directors of marketing. So large productions and things.
Right.
So I was working so hard, pulling off of both with never any downtime. So I actually had lost. I'd always been so good about having this well-balanced life. I had a career that I loved and really fed my soul, very rewarding, and provided me a lot of adventure, and I got to meet interesting people and go places and learn things I would have never been exposed to otherwise. So I had this amazing career.
Yeah.
It's taken me around the world and just amazing. And had, my giving back, and I had my adventure and my play and my travel. And so I had this very well-balanced life. Now still, though, remember, the underlying thread is always pushing myself too hard.
Right. Overachiever.
Though I was happy, joyful, grateful, and inspired, under the surface, there was just always this thing that was pushing me too hard.
Right.
When I started the nonprofit, I lost that balance. And this is also at the same time that my back was getting bad. And so I was giving up those hobbies that brought me so much joy. And so I think I took a lot of that time and energy and gave it to the nonprofit. So at that point, I lost all balance, became way too much about work.
Right.
And like I said, just working around the clock, 7 days a week. Well, what happened is very interesting. About 7 years keeping this pace, my body got my attention And I had actually passed out. Well, my body, let me rephrase that. My body tried to get my attention.
Exactly. Another nudge that you didn't want to listen to, right?
It got my attention a couple of years later. So I ended up in the hospital for 2 days, and they were so concerned that my blood pressure was so low.
Wow.
Not high, surprisingly, but low.
Yeah.
So, ended up having a cardiologist. My heart was fine. We couldn't figure out why my blood pressure was so low. And I kept having these episodes, which was, I'd get so dizzy, I'd have to get down.
Oh, wow.
So I got smart after passing out the first time. Dizzy, if you're that dizzy, get down or you will pass out. So this would happen like every 3 months. Well, 2 years go by. I'm still keeping this pace. And my body got my attention this time.
What was it that was driving you to work so hard and completely abandon the balance that you had before? What was that about?
I loved what I was doing. I was very, very passionate about it. And I'm going to come back to that piece again, because I don't want to, because it's all, I want to jump to what my recent journey has been, and it's such an important part of that.
Yeah. Okay.
When I really discovered the deeper meaning of that. Mm-hmm. So
okay. I'll just pause.
It's coming soon. So my body 2 years later. So it was April of 2019 that my body got my attention. So what was happening every 3 months started happening every day.
Wow. Can't deny that.
No. So I literally was dizzy all the time. My world came to a halt. I couldn't go up a flight of stairs. I had to stop exercise. I was dizzy all the time. My muscles were spasming all over my body. It's called fasciculations 24/7.
Jeez.
And I'm freaking out, like, what is happening? Mm-hmm. And it's a very long story, but what was happening was my central nervous system was shutting down.
Jeez.
To the degree they questioned whether or not I had ALS.
Oh, wow.
So they mentioned that as a possibility, said you have all the classic symptoms. And then I had to wait 6 weeks for the test. Mm-hmm. So nothing being, like being faced with, am I dying? But not just that, am I guaranteed a slow, miserable, torturous death?
Right.
So,
jeez.
Turns out I did not have it, but I still didn't really have any answers. So, and meanwhile, I was diagnosed with dysautonomia. I had passed out on the table for what you call the tilt table test. And it's a very long story, but I have so much other good stuff to get to. I'm going to try and keep it short. But I end up talking to my second neurologist. And by this point I was doing better, but that's what happens with what you call, any dysautonomia, which is typically the sign of a larger neurological issue. You don't just get it. Mm-hmm. It's a sign of something bigger, like an ALS or something.
It's a symptom of.
It's a symptom of. But basically, all your autonomic functions are not functioning. Mm-hmm. And I was doing better, but that's the nature of dysautonomia. Sometimes you're good, and other times you crash. So learning to avoid triggers. So I'm meeting with the second neurologist, and we had did a autonomic test. So I walk in his office, and he says, your autonomic test came back normal. And I'm like, what? Where my previous autonomic test, was positive. I passed out. So at this point he's thinking, she's just a hypochondriac. And and I'm laying on the table, and he's looking for fasciculations. And I'm like, well, I don't feel any right now, but they still happen, but it's a lot less. And so I'm showing him video of, and his eyes got big. So he's starting to pay attention at this point. He's like, oh, wow, those are some pretty serious fasciculations. All right. So he starts really paying attention then. And then he found out the name of my other neurologist. Oh, he's, highly respected and a stand-up guy. And so he's going through the notes and of this other neurologist, and his eyes get big, and he rolls his chair back to me, and he's flicking my fingers, and he's like, oh my gosh, I do. I see traces of it in my right hand, or in your right hand. So slight, I didn't even catch it. And so he just kept repeating it. something's been attacking your entire central nervous system.
Wow.
He said, but you're winning. And they just kept repeating, something's been attacking it over and over again. Something's been attacking your entire central nervous system. So I said to him, can stress cause this? So I explained I had a traumatic childhood. And through my work with the kids over the years, I've learned that when you are growing up and you are living in fear every day, your vagus nerve is overstimulated.
Right.
It's constant fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And that can cause damage. It can cause health issues later. So I explained to him I had a very traumatic childhood. I also have placed myself under so much stress the last few years as I've been building a nonprofit from scratch while
running a business,
while earning a living, running another business with endless work hours, endless responsibility, endless stress. Can stress cause something like this? Immediately and confidently, he says, no. Stress can do this. Stress cannot attack an entire central nervous system. It has to be a virus or something. And I said, well, I've done a lot of
something physical.
I've done a lot of travel and I've been in third world countries and muds and waters, not the typical touristy things. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but I knew it was the stress because when I passed out the first time, it was a very high stress period of time. When my body shut down, same time of year,
right?
Another high stress level time. So I knew it was stress related. So I began to read and learn about the vagus nerve, and really the only way you can heal it is breathing, meditation, Tai Chi. So that became part of my current journey.
Did you find that did that become part of your joy again? Even though it wasn't the adrenaline junkie action?
It's taken me a long time. It's not something that happened.
It looked different.
Quickly. Yeah, it looked very different.
Okay.
Because I've always been such
right. And that's like the opposite of that.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. It's getting quiet and calm versus go hard, fast adrenaline, right?
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah. So I cannot wait to share with you shortly about all the amazing things I've learned, and thanks to the help of meditation.
Right. I know. It's the magical key.
It really is. Yes. It's been a very important part of my journey.
Yay. Okay. Keep going.
So, so I realized I cannot keep doing both. I am literally working myself to death. Mm-hmm. Turns out you can actually do that.
Oh, sure.
So I have to choose. And without hesitation, it was very clear, the nonprofit.
Yeah. Wow.
So no questions, I decided I'm going to give up my career. So I gave up my 30-year career. I gave up a nice income to make nothing. Mm-hmm. But I will always follow my heart, and I will always take a risk. And as long as I've done those things, everything always works out.
Definitely.
It didn't work out the way I thought it was going to work out this time. So that's been
another journey.
Another journey for sure. Definitely not what I expected did not happen.
Yep.
But I decided to give up my career and focus on the nonprofit. So it was January of 2020 that I told all my clients I'm not doing this anymore. Well, what happens right after that? COVID. So shut down. We couldn't have our fundraiser, which is 30% of the income.
Nonprofits took such a hit during that time. Oh my gosh.
Very much so.
Massive impact. Oh.
And and a lot of grants that we were counting on were canceled or redirected to COVID specific. So I certainly, no one did expect that to happen. Mm-hmm. And a lot of nonprofits the size of mine went into hibernation.
Right. Well, they had to in order to survive, period.
Of course, I didn't do that.
Of course you didn't.
I thought, heck no, these kids need us now more than ever.
I know. Well, that is the truth. That was the truth.
So we serve kids that, come from abuse, neglect, poverty, and I knew like these, you take away their school and their social programs and stick them at home in these environments. So we went into overdrive to serve the kids.
With less help and less resources.
With less help. I needed help, but I couldn't hire the help I needed because how do I increase my overhead when I have no idea how we're going to financially survive?
Right.
With all of our income sources basically cut off. So I continued to overwork.
Right.
Still, doing the work of, 8 people. So, and I would laugh. Well, I'm like, well, that's funny. I gave up my career to get balance back in my life. And here I am still overworking.
Right.
And
you haven't learned the lesson yet.
Haven't learned the lesson yet. And now I'm not making any money. This is funny.
Well, you can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Not at the time, but now, yes.
So, taking really big strides to get the balance back in my life, but it's just such in my nature to sacrifice myself. Self-sacrifice. I am an expert. Yes.
Until now.
So, I'm quickly coming to my exciting current journey, which is ever developing.
Yes.
So at that point, so 2 years of that, and I continued to overwork at the same pace. And so now it's January of 2022. I am so desperate for help. And I grew the board and made some shifts to bring in help, and it didn't happen. The opposite happened. I won't go into any details, but I did not get the help I needed. I just got more problems.
Right.
So another year, so all of 22 was just more stress, more overworking. And I realized towards the end of that year, now 3 years after I decided to give up my career just to get a little peace. But I never got it. It was 3 more years of intense stress. So I realized I cannot keep this up. So I decided at the end of 2022 that I needed to step down as executive director of the organization.
Well, and that's a huge moment, Karen, because so many people, specifically in this line of work, they beat themselves up because they think this is mine. If I'm not doing this, it's not going to make it. And I'm doing this to give back. All of the reasons that you went into it start to enter your head and you think, I can't do this. But you said no, because you know that it was not serving what it was supposed to be serving in the first place anymore.
Yep.
Specifically you, but that means everybody else too. So you made that decision for yourself to say, this is not right anymore. This is no longer serving me. This is not the purpose that I am meant to be in any longer. And even though it was hard to do, you made that choice for yourself. I want you to just take that in for a second. That's a big deal. People don't have the courage to do that. So just own that.
Thank you.
And I know was a pivotal turning point in your journey that you're about to talk about. Because I watched you go through it and I remember the stories and all the things, but I just want to point that out because it's really important for people listening to understand how important that choice is. And that is really, truly turning back into what you know is right for you.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a very difficult decision to make. And it similar to the decision I made to walk away from my 30-year career, same kind of thing. I'm like, I was willing to take that risk. I had no idea what was going to be next. I had, the 2 things I built, the 2 organizations I built, I've stepped away from. Now I'm walking away from the second one. At this stage in my life, didn't expect to be starting from scratch, but
it takes courage.
It was scary. Yeah. I remember when I sent the letter out to our supporters, just burst into tears.
I know.
But I knew I had to. I think I would have ended up working myself to death. I thought it's time someone, I'll stay involved. Someone else needs to come in and pass the baton. Someone who's not exhausted themselves and sacrificed so much that can bring new skills and new energy. So I decided to step down. So that was end of 2022. Announced it to our supporters in January of 2023. So that began another unexpected journey. I really thought that the stress level would go down at that point, but things didn't go as I expected, and there were unforeseen circumstances. We'll put it. It just more what it felt very much like betrayal, and it.
Do you think it's because you hadn't really released it?
I'm still working on that.
Okay.
I'm sure to some degree it has to be that.
Right. Okay. I'm just the observer.
Yes. But I mean, I was like, but I'm already walking away. What more do I have to release? Clearly, I must have been meant to completely release.
Really release.
It's because really, I wanted to stay involved, but it felt a bit like a hostile takeover and very unexpected and very painful.
Right.
Because this was my heart and soul.
Sure. This was your baby.
Yes.
Your passion baby with purpose, deep meaning.
So to give so much to build something and to feel like that's being taken away against my wishes was very, very hard.
I understand
and painful. So I knew that when I came to the end of my term as executive director, I was going to take some time off to heal for the first time really in my life. Yes. Ever. Slow down and take some time. So I knew I was planning to take that summer to slow down and do some traveling. But I didn't know the amount of healing that was going to be required because I didn't expect everything that happened in 2023 with, the handover. So I'm really grateful that I've had this time to slow down because there's been a whole lot more healing involved than I could have imagined.
Let's talk about it.
So, so there was healing from the overworking, and that's what I thought all it would be. Give myself time to figure out what's next. But then it was all the unexpected stuff that came up. It was really painful. And then something else that I uncovered. So now to move on to the really juicy stuff, I know that you've been waiting to hear.
Yes, I have. I can't wait.
So I was really diving in deep and doing soul searching and journaling and taking time away, spending time in nature. And sometimes it was just to enjoy, and other times it was really to dive in and journal and
get quiet.
And during some of those trips, when I would be by myself in nature and I would be getting quiet and journaling. And what kept coming up is, okay, why do you push yourself so hard, Karen? What is this about? It's as if you punish yourself. What is this punishment piece? You've got to explore that. I didn't have answers. I was aware, but I just couldn't come up with the answers as to why. And I have a therapist, a life coach that is always very helpful, but I would discuss it with her, and it still didn't resonate. I just really couldn't understand really what was driving it. So, getting a lot of self-awareness but still there is something missing. Well, here comes the missing piece. I have a friend that had gotten into psychedelics and had written a book on it and invited me to a retreat.
Yes.
And it's not something that I knew anything about or even sought out. It just sort of landed in my lap. So I said, okay, let's do this.
Let's do it.
I'm adventurous, right?
That's true. You are.
So I did a psychedelic retreat. So it uncovered some really interesting, unexpected stuff. I was hesitant to, is something going to come up? Well, it did. I first had my throat was twitching and I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, what is this? Was I choked? And I'm like, no, I think this is bigger and deeper. I think this is past life stuff because it was, it's all I could come up with. Mm-hmm. And it's a series of journeys, the medicine they call it. So the next journey, very calmly, very slowly, and without any emotion, some memories surfaced. And what I realized is that I knew I had experienced abuse, but I didn't understand the severity of it and the impact. And it was very helpful because what I realized is that, and I've obviously done a lot of work, but that last piece I couldn't get to. Mm-hmm. It's like this big weight. I realized, oh my gosh, I was so young and it was so frightening.
Yeah. So buried,
that it got buried so deep into my subconscious that all I could think was, it must be past life. No, it's just that it was buried that deep. And it took maybe my showing up with a broken heart even, I don't know, but certainly the medicine to help open up my subconscious to let that up. And
it's amazing how that showed up.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I'm so grateful that, that it surfaced. And now I can see it. I literally picture this ball. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been carrying the weight of that for 50 years.
So speaking about the fact that you now know it and see it, how has that helped you release it?
I now know what drives the punishment piece. So it's been operating in the background in my subconscious, controlling me in ways I had no idea. And all of a sudden it made perfect sense. I'm like, that is what has been driving me. It's been controlling me and I've literally been unaware. And so I couldn't just make sense of it. All of a sudden everything became clear. That's what's been driving me, pushing me so hard. So now I have more compassion for myself.
Oh my gosh,
it's more understanding. And so it was a really important realization for me to understand what drives that I hadn't been able to figure out. And that I've been letting people control me, throughout my lifetime. And what I went through was sort of meant to control me.
Right.
And it's been a really invaluable part of my journey.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And given me realizations I could not have, no matter how much work I did, I don't think I could have ever gotten there and let that surfaced. So I am absolutely a proponent of psychedelics.
Right. I know they serve a purpose.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Really for anyone, but especially if PTSD or trauma.
Well, it looks different for everybody. Certain people, we're all different as far as what speaks to us. So people that struggle with really finding those answers and letting things bubble up, this is a huge, useful, beautiful tool for people to discover that about themselves so they can heal.
Yes.
And that's what people need to understand. Because even me, that's not a journey that I've been on, but am I a huge proponent for people? Because I've seen what happens when they try these things and what it does for them in the healing process. We're here to heal because it carries over lifetime, over lifetime, over lifetime. You've probably been carrying this a lot longer than this life.
Yeah.
And this is just, you just now have an awareness of it. So now you can start releasing it, which is a beautiful thing. Here's my thought. I know you're on a journey and this is a new turning point, a new discovery, realization for you. I think there's going to be a part 2 with this conversation. We've now laid serious groundwork with where you are and where you're going. I cannot wait because I know you have something else planned to do this another time to dive deeper. I want to do this again and do part 2 of Karen so we can hear what else comes up, how you're moving through it, how you're transitioning through it, because there's so much more to talk about. We're limited on time.
Yes.
So I'm going to leave it at that so we can put it on pause till part 2 comes out.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being so open and sharing your story, your journey. It means so much to me. It means so much to our listeners because people can relate, and we just have to be real and share with each other because that's all we have is our experience to share.
Absolutely.
So thank you
That's
so,
where the
so
real
much.
growth is.
It is. That's the growth journey that we're all on. We're all part of it. We're all connected. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing. And I can't wait to hear what's coming next because we're going to do this again.
I look forward to sharing.
Me too. Me too. Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment, if you will. We greatly appreciate it to subscribe and follow us. You can also find us on any of the podcast platforms, whether you're listening here or on YouTube. Also, you can find more content and other valuable information on TammyTuesday.com. Thank you so much for being here. In love and light, peace out.